All right, good evening. This is Chair Justin Cooley, and I would like to call this regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would Deputy City Clerk Megan Wilbanks please call roll?
Commissioner Flores is absent at this time. Commissioner Jorgensen?
Here.
Commissioner Khan?
Here.
Commissioner Munoz Morris will be absent tonight. Commissioner Tolley?
Here.
Vice Chair Houghton?
Here.
Chair Cooley?
Here. All right, now we are at on our agenda, we are at public comment for items not on the agenda. At this time, we will hear any public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. Items raised are generally referred to staff, and if action by the commission is necessary, may be scheduled for a future meeting. Deputy City Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Thank you, Chair. I haven't received any requests to speak. However, I see some folks in the audience, so if you wanted to speak at this time, please let me know. Okay. Was it on non-agenda comment or on the public hearing item? Was your comment or not agenda items or on the? I'm not even sure I'm in the right spot. Okay. Well, if you wouldn't mind, fill out the little yellow sheet there and that'll give me an idea of when to call on you.
We'll hang on just a second until we have a chance to review where he intends to speak.
Normally it says your name when you're did it or something.
All right, thank you, sir. You'll have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Should take about 30 seconds because I'm not even sure I'm in the right spot. I think I am. I have a question, like if you're new to the community and you came in and you were looking at buying a house over by Pauley, for example, and it's all zoned R1, but there's a few empty lots around you. You buy the house, how do you know the zoning integrity stays the same on the R1 lots? And you don't end up with condos built next to you?
Might be a question we would, I don't know if staff has any comments on that or would like to, encourage him to make an appointment at another time or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you my business card and I can have a chat with you if you'd like. If you want to give me a call or send me an email.
Well, isn't it more of a political issue than just a technical issue?
Well, the zoning regulations or the zoning map is what it is unless it's amended either by the city or by individuals that come forward with a proposal to change zoning regulations or the map.
So you guys would be the ones that would change the zoning though, right?
It's the city council with a recommendation from the
planning commission.
Yes.
It doesn't happen very easily, I can say that.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you, sir. And I'm not seeing anyone else rushing up to speak for non-agenda public comment. All right, so I'm going to close that public comment. That takes us to consent. And the item on our consent agenda is consideration of minutes from our February 26th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. Before we vote, do any commissioners have any comments on consent and the minutes?
I'm going to abstain because I was absent.
All right. Any other comments? Do I have a motion and a second to approve consent?
I'll move to approve. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. All right, that takes us to our public hearing. Any court challenge to the action taken on public hearing items on this agenda may be limited to considering only those items, those issues raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city of San Luis Obispo at or prior to the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please give your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The public hearing item before us is to receive the 2024 General Plan Annual Report. Would Assistant Planner Ethan Estrada please present the staff report?
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Again, my name is Ethan Estrada, and tonight I will be presenting the 2024 General Plan Annual Report. Before I begin, I'd just like to apologize. I'm getting over a cold, so I may have to take a second to get some water every so often during this presentation, so thank you. So staff's recommendation tonight is for your commission to receive and file the 2024 General Plan Annual Report for final review and acceptance by the City Council. State law requires each city and county to adopt a general plan consisting of multiple elements, at minimum 7. The City of San Luis Obispo's general plan consists of 8 elements covering a range of topics such as land use, climate adaptation and safety, housing, and more. Overall, the general plan is a comprehensive statement of the city's goals, and it guides the use and protection of various resources to achieve them. It is a living document that is periodically amended by the City Council, who consider recommendations made by citizens, appointed advisory bodies, other agencies, and city staff. The California Government Code and the city's land use element require an annual report be made on the status of the general plan. This report provides an opportunity for the city to gauge the efficacy of both the actions taken to implement the general plan and the plan's policies themselves. So with that, let's go over some highlights from the report. As required by Land Use Element Policy 11.3, staff is to provide a summary of private development activity in the city. The Community Development Department tracks application totals in real time via its EnerGov permitting system, providing insight into development trends in the city. In 2024, a total of 264 planning applications were received. This includes use permits, development review, subdivisions, and more. Comparing what the city received over the last 2 years, this number is increasing, which at this time is attributed to an increase in exception requests requiring director review. In 2024, a total of 574 building permits were issued, which included permits for a net total of 442 residential units, accounting for demolitions that occurred. The 442 units consisted of 119 single-family units, 96 accessory dwelling units, and 234 multifamily units. Land Use Element Policy 1.11.2 states that the city's housing supply shall grow no faster than 1% per year on average, based on the estimated population growth outlined in Table 3 of the Land Use Element. Affordable units, new units within the downtown core, and accessory dwelling units are exempt from these regulations. In 2024, excluding the units exempt, 342 units were added to the city's housing stock. With this addition, a total of 23,748 units are subject to this growth management policy. Accounting for this addition to the housing stock, between the years of 2015 and 2024, the city has maintained an average annual growth rate of 1.03%, exceeding the 1% growth threshold for residential units. Per existing regulations, there is no action required to address the residential growth rate exceeding this threshold. The City Council could choose to establish limitations on new residential development through phasing of specific plans and annexation areas as allowed by the residential growth management regulations in the city's municipal code. Any direction to consider such limitations would need to be further evaluated to ensure compliance with the Housing Crisis Act, which significantly restricts the city's ability to enforce growth and development caps in a manner that impairs the issuance of building permits or the development of housing in areas where housing is otherwise allowed. There are narrow exceptions to the statutory restriction on growth caps, likely not applicable here, and any action to restrict housing permits or development would need to be reviewed and approved by HCD. It's important to remember that over the past several financial plans, the city has prioritized policies and programs to support housing production. This trend in residential growth is an indication that the city's efforts are working. Regardless, given the impending completion of several large housing-focused specific plan areas, it is anticipated that the average annual residential growth rate could fall back under the 1% threshold within the next few years. Additionally, per state data for 2024, the city's population is at 48,684 residents, whereas the land use element anticipated a population of approximately 50,000 by 2025, based on a 1% annual population growth rate. Land use element policy 1.11.4 requires the city to evaluate increases to non-residential floor area over a period of 5 years. Should the net growth rate exceed 5%, the council shall consider implementing limits on new non-residential floor area. In 2024, 71,386 square feet of net new non-residential floor area was added to the city. This placed the annual growth rate for 2024 at 0.6%, and the 5-year net growth rate at 2.26%, well below the 5% threshold. Staff has continued its efforts to implement various housing element programs that cover a wide range of housing issues and topics. Table 6, beginning on page 8 of the GPAR, lists and discusses the variety of actions taken by staff in 2024 to implement these programs. These actions primarily focused on providing safe housing and renter protections, supporting housing solutions, and homelessness response. The city's 6th cycle housing element period began in January 2019, with the last update to the housing element adopted by council in November 2020 and certified by HCD in September of 2021. With this update came the city's Regional Housing Needs Allocation, also known as RHNA. This RHNA allocation is not an obligation of resources, but rather is a target for the city to work towards. As displayed in Table 7 on page 12 of the GPAR, the city's RHNA allocation for the 6th cycle was placed at 3,354 housing units to plan for. In 2024, the city permitted 252 new housing units that count towards the city's quantified objectives. These objectives include the income level categories with remaining units, which are currently the extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income levels. As of 2024, the city has 1,289 units left of this RHNA allocation. The city is positioned to add more below market rate units towards its RHNA allocation in the coming years. There are a total of 474 units in the development process, with 247 of these units under construction, 205 under building permit review, and 22 under planning review. For homelessness solutions, 2024 saw City Council approve an update to the city's homelessness response strategic plan, which sought to align with the county's plan to reduce homelessness by 50% between 2022 and 2027. Some other highlights include participating in collaborative efforts to obtain state funding for permanent supportive housing, the creation of a rotating overnight safe parking pilot program, and continue to work with the Community Action Team, the Mobile Crisis Unit, and public partners such as Downtown SLO and CAPSLO. In 2024, city staff continued to oversee the development of numerous area and specific plans. Starting with the Margarita Area Specific Plan, remaining projects include the Prado Business Park and a mixed-use project at 365 Prado Road. Additionally, the city selected a consultant to prepare an amendment to the Margarita Area Specific Plan following an amendment to be made to the Airport Land Use Plan. For the Orchid Area Specific Plan, the Rigetti Ranch subdivision is substantially complete, while as of the writing of this report, the enclave at Rigetti, Tiburon Place, and the Jones mixed-use projects are under construction. Bullock Ranch is under building permit review, and Pratt property is awaiting building permit submittal. For the Airport Area Specific Plan, we have a mix of projects at different stages of the development review process. There are several large mixed-use projects under review, as well as the SLO Airport Hotel, a U-Haul personal storage and warehouse, and medical offices. In 2024, city staff began preparing an amendment to the Airport Area Specific Plan to allow mixed-use projects on properties within this plan that are zoned commercial service and manufacturing, which is consistent with state law. For the Avila Ranch development plan, the single-family residences included in phases 1, 2, and 3 are still under construction, with the remaining units of phase 4 and phase 5 awaiting building permit submittal. Development at Froome Ranch was on hold throughout 2024 due to ownership changes. However, city staff recently met with the project developer and anticipate progress to resume in 2025. For the San Luis Ranch specific plan, the Spring Hill Suites Hotel and various single-family residences are under construction. In 2024, the City Council authorized the submittal of general plan and specific plan amendments for San Luis Ranch, specifically pertaining to Lot 7, which contains approximately 11 acres of commercially zoned land. The developer has proposed to develop 276 market-rate multifamily units in place of the planned 100,000 square foot commercial center. Applications for these amendments are expected to be processed in 2025. In fiscal year 2024, the city collected $10.9 million in transient occupancy tax, surpassing fiscal year 2023, which was previously the best performing year in the city's history. The city's promotional coordinating committee also continued implementing programs such as Arttober, the Cultural Arts and Community Promotions Program, and its Support Local campaign, which included a multi-channel paid advertising plan, local public relations, social media content strategy, and business support. For 2024, availability from the city's 4 water sources equaled 10,246 acre-feet, which exceeds the projected primary water supply need of 7,496 acre-feet, plus an additional 1,216 acre-feet for a reliability reserve and a secondary water supply of 1,534 acre-feet. Additional information is available in the city's annual water supply and demand assessment. In accordance with the circulation element of the general plan, 2024 saw a lot of activity in all aspects of transportation and circulation. Some highlights for vehicular transportation and bicycle and pedestrian transportation include the city's first Vision Zero Action Plan, which is a comprehensive study of current safety trends in the city. The study assists staff with determining priorities in areas of engineering, enforcement, and education to improve traffic safety citywide. The city also saw the completion of the arterials paving project and the North Truro Neighborhood Greenway project, which included the expansion and increased protection of bike and pedestrian paths, the installation of or improvement of numerous curb ramps, improved visibility and path lighting, and more. Now looking at slow transit and parking services, some 2024 highlights include the purchase of 2 additional battery electric buses for the city's bus fleet. Staff anticipates that half of this fleet will consist of zero-emission vehicles by 2026. Staff also reported nearly 576,000 passenger trips in 2024, which is a 12% increase from the previous year. Additionally, Slow Transit continued preparing its short-range transit plan update, with adoption anticipated in early 2025. This plan will recommend a host of service, fare, and program changes for the next 5 years to meet the community's transportation needs. Now for parking services, following a comprehensive study, City Council approved a parking rate reduction for the downtown area. City Council also adopted Parking Services Technology Roadmap Report, which recommended various actions for city staff to take, such as the digitization of garage permits, adopting a single mobile payment app for on-street parking, implementation of a standard vendor for new gated systems in all parking garages, and more. The climate adaptation and safety element of the general plan calls for adequate planning, organization, and resources for emergency preparedness and emergency response. The fire and police departments continued to take steps to protect the city's residents, reduce crime, and prepare for other potential dangers in alignment with these policies. The fire department responded to 7,004 incidents in 2024. Outside of these standard responses, the fire department continued operations with its urban search and rescue team, responding to 16 technical rescues and medical emergencies in open space areas in and around the city. The fire department also continued operations with its mobile crisis unit, primarily responding to behavioral health incidents. The MCU team responded to 151 calls for service and engaged in 2,998 field contacts. The police department completed its first year of its 5-year strategic plan, which included a department-wide staffing study, implementation of data-driven policing tools, establishment of an online recruitment portal, and more. The police department also continued its operations with its community action team, who engaged with 471 individuals and issued 197 treatment referrals to mental health and substance abuse services. The police department also continued operations with its community service officer program, offering personalized services to residents, the business community, and visitors. The general plan contains a host of policies focused on open space protection. These policies apply to sensitive lands within the city's urban reserve, as well as land in the San Luis Obispo Greenbelt area protected for its biological, agricultural, aesthetic, and watershed protection value. City staff continue to implement these policies through a variety of efforts, including restoration work and invasive species control in the Miosi Open Space, the Froome Profumo, and San Luis Obispo Creeks, and Johnson Ranch. Staff also completed the first phase of trail work in the Rigetti Hill Open Space. In alignment with the park and recreation element of the general plan, staff continue to provide programs and services with the focus on youth, senior, and family programming. This included continuation of the recreational youth and adult sports, as well as a variety of other community programs such as the September Scramble. Park and recreation activities also included open space maintenance, such as the new bike park within Laguna Lake Park. Phases 1 and 2 of this new park included the mountain bike loop, kids pump track, and the 2 jump lines for both progressive and advanced levels. The city also saw the completion of the North Broad Street Neighborhood Park, which now includes 18 garden plots, a playground, seating tables, walking paths with lighting, and more. Additionally, the Chang and Mitchell Park renovations were completed with the installation of a bocce ball court, upgraded picnic area, and more at Mitchell Park, and a complete renovation of Chang Park with the installation of a meditation pond, full landscaping, upgrades to the gazebo, and more. In conclusion, this report has shown that the city continues to make substantial progress in implementing the policies outlined in the general plan. Additionally, the data in various reports provided by city staff indicate that the city has been successful in continuing to promote and achieve development and economic growth, community safety and well-being, climate adaptation, and more. With that, I conclude my presentation, and again, this is staff's recommendation for your convenience. Thank you.
Great, thank you for the report. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff this time? Go ahead.
So kind of going through in order of your presentation, thank you, Ethan. This 1.03%, there's a little bit of time spent in the report about, oh, it's over 1%. And if you round at all, then I think it's, I mean, if we're playing horseshoes here, then that's really good, right? That's amazing, I think.
Correct.
Okay. So it seems like maybe celebration is in order.
Especially if you consider that I think the target is an average over the years, right?
Yeah. And then, so then there's some verbiage in there that says, well, we'll get back below 1% because things are going to slow down. So that's the part I was kind of interested in. We've had a whole bunch of housing come in with Rigetti, with Avila, with San Luis Ranch, and so on. So is it kind of like, I'm thinking of those cartoons where the snake eats something and it moves through the snake. Are we digesting a whole bunch of housing and we're going to have leaner times ahead? Is that kind of your view?
That's staff's opinion at this time, yes.
Okay. I mean, we don't have too many more Rigettis and San Luis ranches and things like that coming along, right?
Well, we do have a lot of projects that have been entitled that have not moved through the building permit process as of yet. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of the larger expansion areas are either most of the way complete or complete, but there are thousands of units that are entitled in different areas of the city that have not pulled building permits to start construction. And so those are still several years out. So I think we're in a kind of hit a peak and we might start to see a little bit of a valley, and then there's another one coming in a few years probably.
Okay, that makes sense. And it seems like we're on a nice pace, the way that expand, because we do want more housing. We've talked about that a lot, and it seems like the rate at which it's been coming along has been pretty good. So there was a mention of 50% homelessness reduction by 2027. How are we doing on that? from what to what? I mean, I remember asking early on when I got here, how many homeless people are there in San Luis Obispo? And you guys had an answer. It was like 462 or something. And so can you put a number or two to that? And
Sure, it
so
might
we
take
see
me a
where we're
moment
at?
to pull up the county, but that is referring to the county's goal. So the countywide goal was to reduce homelessness countywide by 50% in their 5-year strategic plan. So again, we're in year 25 and it goes until 27. So the county has provided an update to the Board of Supervisors, I believe last spring, on their progress to date. I believe, and I was going to pull up the last pit count number, there was a reduction in the unhoused or an unsheltered count countywide. Well, we did see an increase in the city, but the countywide numbers did go down for unsheltered homelessness, and the sheltered number went up. Those are the two numbers that are counted in each kind of biannual pit count. So they are. There's a lot of kind of factors that go into that. I think it's constantly in flux. So I don't, off the top of my head, actually Teresa's maybe assisting me here. Looks like in 2015, the unsheltered count was what, 1,123, and in 24, that
That's for the
unsheltered
county, right?
countywide, the unsheltered number was at 800. So it is a decrease, of over 300 over that time, but it's obviously fluctuated between 2015 and 2024. So hard to tell where that number will land in 27 when that's kind of the conclusion of their 5-year plan. They will then be doing an update to that with a new 5-year plan. The city's homelessness response strategic plan, we've tried to align with the countywide plan, and our current plan is a 2-year in 2-year increments, but we are planning to extend that to be a 3 to 5-year plan to better align with the county. So our numbers likewise have fluctuated over the last few years. It's a hard number. It's not static. There's, kind of a constant inflow and outflow of people experiencing homelessness, but we have seen a lot of, good growth in terms of the sheltered count and that increasing. And then we do have several permanent supportive housing projects that have come online in the last few years and that are opening. So the city partnered with People's Self-Help Housing on the Motel 6 North project, which is the Kiowa-Keene Home Key, and that'll be 75 new permanent supportive housing units, and then partnering with the county on the Welcome Home Village, which is going to be 14 interim and 40 permanent supportive. So it's kind of looking at all of those projects that we have in the pipeline and hoping that we see, a positive trend on the pit count.
Okay, great. Yeah, we see this a lot in the things that come through this commission, and so I was kind of curious what's the overall trend like, and so.
Positive trend, I'd say.
Yeah, it seems like it, yeah. So we could talk forever on that, so I'll move on. And then, Ethan, you mentioned that San Luis Ranch, there was a substitution happening. Something was being substituted for 100,000 square feet of commercial space, and that is a proposal that's going to come before us before too long. Can you just say a little bit about what that is?
So that was a project where the applicant was looking at a site that is zoned commercial, and was looking at changing the land use for the site to include mostly residential.
We're talking about the whole area of San Luis Ranch, right off the freeway there?
It's off the corner of Delidio.
Yeah.
And as that comes into the development,
Yeah.
I guess it'd be to the southwest. So yeah, that corner site has a kind of a new land use kind of scheme that looks at mostly residential with some commercial on the corner. And so the city council looked at that and did allow the project to be initiated. So applications are still forthcoming from the applicant to pursue kind of a different proposal at that location. Okay.
And right when you say at the corner, you mean up towards World Market and the mall, and where the Prado overpass eventually will go, right? And then that wasn't in the report, but well, I'll leave that alone. I had a question about how that project is looking. And though the North Broad Street Park, that's actually in my neighborhood. How's that doing? I've driven by it many times. I've not yet seen anybody in it. I don't know, expect you to have like a surveillance stick or something.
I'm
but-
not aware of the status of that particular
Okay.
part.
Okay.
But we can get back to you on that
Okay.
if you'd like.
And then the water use element, you had 117 gallons per day per person, and that's the sort of number that we look at and up at Cal Poly and the planning stuff that I do up there. So I think that I remember the national average being on the order of 75 gallons per person per day. So is that like the total amount of water that that our city provides divided by the number of residents per day? Is that an actual number that of actual use?
We have a representative from Water here who can answer that for
good.
you.
Yes, thank you. Shauna Scott, Special Projects Manager with our Utilities Department. So the 117 gallons per capita per day is dictated in our general plan for how we calculate our primary water supply. It is derived from the Water Conservation Act of 2019 that established water conservation goals for the Central Coast area. And so looking at the city's actual water use, it has ranged over the past 10 years between 90 and 100 gallons per capita per day. So our water conservation measures are pretty aggressive and the community responds to it. So we're definitely using less water than is dictated by those water conservation goals.
Okay, great. So 117 is kind of a planning number that we want to be ready for, and it seems like we're coming in below that.
That is correct. And as mentioned, it was certainly dictated by the state. They determined the water conservation goals for different regions within California. And then our general plan provides those formulas for how we determine our primary water supply. We also have our reliability reserve, which is really a buffer. And then we also have a secondary water supply that can be used for short-term demands.
Yeah, that's from wells, well pumping and that sort of thing.
We don't currently use any groundwater wells, but we do have a project right now that will be kicking off this summer for 2 groundwater extraction and treatment wells. It'll actually treat some, there's a PCE plume within part of the aquifer within the city, and so this project will treat that aquifer and provide an additional source of water for the city.
Okay, all right. And I haven't heard anything lately about water conservation. I haven't gotten anything in the mail, and it hasn't come before this commission lately. Is there anything that we're thinking about doing? And in the meantime, we've had hundreds, actually thousands of units come online. Were you feeling pretty good that we have enough water?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
looking at our current water supply, we have a diverse water portfolio, and we're looking good for build out of the general plan.
Okay, great.
One more question for her.
Yeah.
Where are those wells located?
So the 2 wells will be sited, actually, if you're familiar with the Water Resource Recovery Facility, there's a parcel of land in between the highway and the wharf, and so those 2 wells will be located there.
Okay.
One of them kind of near the Bob Jones Bike Trail, so it's kind of the perfect location for access to those wells.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you.
Nothing further at the moment.
All right, any other questions? Go ahead.
A couple of questions. There was some information about how in the open space and other areas, people are working on fire prevention. There's some new maps out that seem to show a lot more high hazard zones in the city. And I was curious if the fire department feels ready for all of that. It looked like a lot of red.
You ready?
Good evening, Todd Tuggle, Fire Chief for the City of SLO. So the maps came out on Monday, and the numbers are. Is that me? I don't.
You brought a hose in with you. No.
So the maps came out on Monday, March 10th. Previously, we had 24 parcels that were in what's called the very high fire hazard severity zone. As of Monday, we have 2,850. So it's a pretty significant increase. There's also The previous maps, which came out in 2011, only mapped within the local responsibility area, very high fire hazard severity zones. The new maps, as of Monday, now include also the high fire hazard severity zones and the moderate severity zones. So when you're looking at Government Code 51175 on down through 51183, there are regulations that include those high and moderate zones that previously were not considered or contemplated because the local responsibility maps didn't include those. There's a lot to this, and I would be getting ahead of myself if I gave you much more information about what the plan's going to look like, because we are just now starting to capture the magnitude of what's coming down the pipe for us. So that's kind of a high-level summary right now. And I'll just add the one other piece of this is that we do have, Chapter 7A of the Building Code, which is due to be updated here in July with the new state code. The local amendments will be adopted by the end of the year. We also have a new wildland urban interface code that will be part of that discussion, and fire code is also being adopted, or is also coming through at the same time. So there's a lot more conversation to be had. The public review and comment period for the hazard maps, which by code needs to be out within 30 days of the receipt of the maps. That process is, we're looking at how to get that out to the public. And then the code adoption will be within 120 days of the publication of the maps. So that's slated, I think it's on the agenda for, well, it's projected to be on the agenda for July 1st, where we'll adopt.
So the codes, the building codes, we're talking about new construction, or will this apply to existing
Great question.
structures?
Yes, for new construction and building permits, as the code does read today and has read previously. The question or the inclusion that's going to be new is for us is the high hazard zones. So previously that was not part of the building code in the high hazard zones within a local response area. That has changed because now they are mapping high fire hazard severity zones. So Chapter 7A will apply to a larger portion of the city's parcels.
I see. So that's, in a sense, there's like a 10-fold increase, it sounds like, in parcels.
Hundreds.
So, yeah.
100-fold increase.
Well, 100-fold. Oh, maybe I didn't write it down right.
It's kind of hard to get your head wrapped around. But yeah. Yeah.
So in this next period, ideally, you're equipped to handle whatever we face, huh?
We're going to have, that's part of what we are looking at is what does the 100-fold increase in the number of parcels that have to be assessed, what does that look like? How are we going to address that? And what resources do we need to have?
So you said 20,850, I think, then maybe.
So it was 24 parcels before. It's 2,000.
Oh, got it. Okay.
2,850.
I wrote 240.
In the very high. It doesn't account for the another 1,600 plus that are in high and another 1,400 that are in moderate. So since we got the maps 3 days ago, to your point, we've got a lot of assessment to do on what the needs will be to address those.
Good. I think we're well equipped with you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I follow up with just one thing? Just not a question, but when I read the number 7,004 incidents for the past year, and that's 20 or so per day, that just really kind of blew my mind. And so I was just wanting to appreciate that you guys do a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I will add that's actually a drop from the year before.
I saw that too.
Yeah, and I credit a lot of that to the mobile crisis unit that's starting to show its impact on taking some of the load off the emergency response calls. So we're starting to see the MCU and its ability to get out in front of some customers that we see repeatedly. It's also able to take on some of the behavioral health response calls and not actually have to send an engine or a truck to those calls. But thank you for noticing that. Appreciate that.
I did the same math in my head when I saw that number too, and wanted to say that was very impressive. Just the load that you guys cover, and I'm glad that it's decreasing from the previous year.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for staff generally?
I had a couple more.
Sure,
if I
go for
could.
it.
So, Ethan, you talked about there was some permit data that you provided. Are the processes moving smoother and faster? I know the Planning Commission isn't as involved as it used to be, so I'm assuming that saves a hell of a lot of time right there. But
Yeah, I
there
mean,
any-
as a assistant planner myself, the digitization of these processes is definitely smoothed that out. The ability to reach out to other folks involved in this process is a lot easier than it was when before that happened. So I'd say it's a lot smoother. Yeah.
And does the public feel that things are moving faster? Is that possible or likely?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, a lot of the projects, I would say most of the projects that we receive on the planning entitlement side are now at a director level for approval. So that provides the authority, community development director, to approve, as an example, up to 49 housing units in a project, whereas before anything 11 or more was planning commission approval. So that right there, most of the, unless it's a very large project, which we do have here and there, most of them are coming in at the director level for review.
Also, you had information, switching topics here, about code enforcement and noise party calls and this kind of thing. Are there actions being taken to kind of reduce that load that you're aware of, that the city's trying to do to reduce what seemed to be a heck of a lot of monthly noise calls in neighborhoods?
Yeah, so the city currently, community development's working with our code enforcement staff to kind of prioritize some of those issues, working more collaboratively with our police department in getting weekend report logs and looking through those to be able to track and really focus in on some of the bad behavior in some of the neighborhoods, specifically around Cal Poly.
And then lastly, this is more a complicated question, but it strikes me that the Madonna Plaza areas, and I know there's probably a lot of property owners there, are all kind of zoned commercial retail, but there's an awful lot of empty buildings, and it seems like such a prime location for more housing. And I'm just wondering, I'm also thinking of kind of how Madonna Plaza connects to downtown, and I can see that it looks like Caltrans is finally moving out of its properties there, some of which are zoned, I think, commercial retail as well. And I'm just wondering how, if the city's starting to think about how to organize something that would allow, very good access to downtown from there, much better than we have now in terms of especially maybe active transportation. I guess you have to work with Caltrans if it's over the freeway and stuff, but how we can kind of take advantage of what looks like an awful lot of open space there, and sort of how it can be connected over time to downtown. I'm just curious if we're thinking about that long range.
I'll just say one thing about that, which is that I've seen the plans for the South Higuera Road Diet,
That's a start. That's a great start.
which
Big start.
is looking like it's
connect with all this.
right. So that's a piece of it anyway.
Amen.
Luke Schwartz, Transportation Manager. I can weigh in on that. Are you talking specifically about the Caltrans kind of headquarters and maintenance properties that are off of Madonna?
Both of those, but somehow just because that's on this side of the
Yeah.
freeway, and just thinking over time, it sort of creates some opportunities to kind of make it easier to flow
Yeah, certainly.
back and forth in the long run.
I'm not sure of how the timing will ultimately work out. My understanding is the first phase of their plans is relocating their maintenance facility, which is the property that exists on the north side of Madonna Road. They have an environmental approval and are planning to relocate that to a new facility off of Buckley Road. I don't know about their funding and timing plan. The next phase of that kind of campus master plan would be potentially offices on Buckley Road on the north side, which is their kind of longer term phase. I think some of that's dependent on Caltrans getting a better handle of what their staffing and in-person office space needs are. They kind of went to a largely remote workforce during COVID and are kind of working their way back and seeing what their long-term needs are.
And they
I think-
built the new facility in Higuera too.
And they have the offices, the Midway building. I think the long-term plan conceptually was to locate all of their various campuses throughout the city into one spot off of Buckley Road. In the short term, the maintenance yard, I don't know that it's going to be vacated or sold. My guess is it sits in that state until they figure out what they're doing at the rest of their offices. The long-term plan is ideally their whole facilities off of Madonna Road are vacated. And from a circulation standpoint, our goals would be to realign Madonna Road further to the south. So to connect, basically we're like Bridge Street and McCarthy kind of auto dealer is now, with either a roundabout or a better designed traffic signal. Increase that spacing from that intersection to the South Street intersection so that we don't have two really closely spaced intersections that don't operate well together. That opens up other possibilities for connections for active transportation, but I'm not certain on the time frame. I would guess the wholesale campus relocation and realignment of Madonna Road would be far out, a decade plus.
So it would be maybe prepared if there were a lot more housing in the Madonna Plaza area, or housing on top of commercial, whatever, then at least circulation would work better on the other side of the freeway.
Yeah, wherever the growth is happening, that feeds more traffic to that corridor, depending on the timing of the Prado interchange. That Madonna-Higuera intersection and how close it is to the South Street intersection is going to continue to be congested.
Good, thank you, appreciate it.
All right, any other questions for staff? Go ahead.
I just wanted to offer a data point on Commissioner Jorgensen's question about how's the permitting process working. I built a front porch on my house last year. And so I went through the whole process. I went to the counter, got my plans, got review. Everything was I was impressed with the process, and it was smooth and pretty fast. And the inspections went well, and I had good comments from the reviewer. And so
I'm a little disappointed we didn't get to review it.
too late.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, if I don't have any other comments, or questions at the moment, we'll go to public comment. And Deputy City Clerk, do we have any requests to speak on this item?
Chair, I have not received any requests to speak on this item.
All right, seeing that most of the audience is city staff, I'm going to assume we don't have anyone coming up. So I'm going to close public comment and just give us one more chance to ask any final questions of staff before we... Actually, let me ask, being a receive and file, do we need a vote on this?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thanks.
I have a couple other questions that aren't necessarily from the presentation, but are from the annual report. So, okay. I'll go by page number here. On page 5 of the report, which is page 29 of our packet, there's a table, the 1% population growth projection, and at the bottom it says estimated urban reserve capacity, 57,200 anticipated people. What does that mean? What does that number mean, the anticipated or estimated urban reserve capacity?
So that's the area between, so we have the urban reserve line around the city, and then we have the city limit line. It's the area between those two.
And based on zoning, how many more units or people it might absorb?
Correct.
Okay. And we also have projections there that go up through 2035 that nudge up pretty close to that number. So if you kind of connect the dots there over the next 10 years, we're going to kind of build out to the urban reserve line anyway?
Yeah, well, the plan would be, we're 10 years into a 20-year general plan, and we're basically, I think you mentioned, we're right on target in terms of our anticipated growth. So I would say, yeah, that's exciting. And given kind of where things are going to go, we do anticipate we will still have capacity in, over the next decade or so as we build out to 2035. But that all depends on the development and timing of that for new housing.
Okay, great. And then my next question was about RHNA and the table on the report, page 11 and 12. And what it shows there at the bottom of that table is total units remaining by income level, and it's broken down, but it's 1,289. And our target is 3,354. and there's 3 years left in that period. So are we behind on RENA housing and catching up to our allocation?
Yeah, I mean, with the RENA allocation, we're about halfway through that allocation, and we're about halfway through this RENA period. So I think we're doing pretty well. But again, I just remind you all that this is more of a goal.
Yeah.
This is not really a specific obligation.
Yeah.
So compared to a lot of other jurisdictions, I think we've been adding quite a few to this and doing well.
Sure seems like we've been doing good in that department. I just was kind of curious how we measure up. And so, I mean, if we were halfway through, then we should be more like 1,700, but I understand what you're saying. And then right across from that, I noticed 474 active housing projects, and I'm looking down that list of Sendero and Waterman Village and Calle Joaquin, and these are all things that we've seen come through here. And when I see that number 474, I just kind of went, that's great. I thought we should pat ourselves on the back for that. So, and I also noticed some of the numbers on the homelessness solutions section, page 1415, and just am really impressed with everything that we're doing in that realm. And I appreciate all the efforts that are happening there. So thanks for that. Just more yay kind of stuff. I did have a question on page 16, 40 Prado. How much do we spend to run 40 Prado per year, approximately? Is that easy to come up with?
Let me pull up our amount. The city does provide funding annually to 40 Prado. That's not their full budget, obviously, to operate the Homeless Services Center, but I can provide the number that the city is funding them currently. So for fiscal year 24-25, the city provided, sorry, just pulling up the contracts, I get the exact amount. $258,826. That covers some operational support, a hotel voucher program, the 40 Prado Safe Parking Program, the warming center, and then we also provide in-kind bus tokens for their participants.
I was prepared to hear a much larger number than that.
Again, that's the city's contribution. The county also provides funding annually for the Homeless Services Center, and then they braid a lot of funding between different grant sources, private donations. Yeah,
So the overall budget for 40 Prado is probably quite a bit more than that.
It is. That's just, again, the city's contributions.
Right.
I don't have their full budget for 40
Okay.
Prado, but that's what the city contributes annually.
But that seems like the city's contribution kind of sounds like a bargain for the city.
Oh, yeah, I know. And then I know this isn't really our purview, but are there more 40 Prados elsewhere in the county? Like, does Paso have something like that? Templeton, AG?
There's no other access center to the degree that 40 Prado operates. It's the only access center in the county, but Five Cities Homeless Coalition does have two different projects, more emergency shelter, but they have their Cabins for Change project, which are the tiny home modular units. And then they opened a second project very similar to that called Ballet Co. And so those are both, again, in South County. In North County, ECHO, El Camino Homeless Coalition, they operate a shelter for individuals and families. Then they also have the Paso Home Key Project, which is a partnership with Haslo, People Self-Help Housing, and ECHO. That was a Home Key grant similar to the Home Key grant that the city received for the Calle Joaquin Home Key Project.
Okay, great. That's good to hear, all that stuff. Okay. Thanks. I'm almost done here. And on page 27 of the report, which is our page 51, the city collected over 1.1 million in tax revenue from cannabis and budgeting for about the same next year. Do we directly get tax revenue from booze in the city, or is that goes to the state? And then is there anything to compare that to?
We don't get taxes from alcohol sales.
Okay. I was just kind of wondering if there was a comparison, what would that look like? Simply curiosity there. And then that's all I have.
All right, I think it seems like we kind of transitioned from questions to comments. So I would say if anyone else has any comments, Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adopt staff's recommendation and receive and file the annual report.
I'll make that motion.
I'll be happy to second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I take it we have no deliberation before we take the vote. Deputy City Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Khan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Houghton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Tully,
Yes.
Chair Cooley.
Yes.
And motion
Thank you very
passes.
much. All right, that takes us to staff updates and agenda forecast. Would Deputy Community Development Director Tyler Corey please provide the update?
All right, thank you, Chair Cooley, members of the commission. Looking out, our next regularly scheduled meeting is on March 26th. I currently do not have any items, so that meeting is going to be canceled. And then moving into the first meeting in April 9th, we have currently 2 items on the agenda. One of them, public hearing item, looking at some cannabis zoning cleanup, text amendments and map amendments there, as well as a consent item for a street abandonment. So that's what I have looking out in the forecast, and then beyond that, things get a little less certain.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Tyler about upcoming meetings or anything else?
I was going to mention the email that I sent to you, Tyler, about trying to get some portion of one of these meetings to have a listening session on Diablo Canyon. And did that make it to you, or?
It did. I was out of the office, so I just got that.
Okay.
Haven't had a chance to really think about it too much, but just a couple thoughts around that.
Sure. No, and there's no rush on this. I just wanted to kick it into the realm. But what do you think about that?
So definitely not within the Planning Commission's purview. And I would say it's something that would be more probably appropriate at the city council level if they're interested in doing something like that. But I would see that the council would definitely want to be making those kind of decisions around whether a community meeting on Diablo Canyon is going to be on an agenda.
Okay. Yeah, and this is originating just because I'm on the Diablo Canyon engagement panel for decommissioning. And when I talk to people around town, there's a lot of confusion about what's the deal. Oh, I thought it was going to shut down. Oh, I heard it's going to run for another 20 years. And I think that even though it's not squarely in our purview, it affects a lot of what we do here as far as revenue and housing and jobs and all kinds of things. So if that, we can talk more about it offline and just see where that ought to land. But part of that whole panel is engagement, and we feel like we're not getting engaged enough. And so we're all individually, the members of that panel, looking for avenues and ways to engage with the public, and it seems like this is possibly one. So we can talk about it more, no rush.
All right. Anything else before we wrap this up? All right. The regular meeting of March 26, 2025 will be canceled as previously mentioned. So the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is scheduled for April 9th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers at City Hall, 990 Palm Street, San Luis Obispo. And we are adjourned.